Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Officer Candidate School graduation for Class 50125. We invite you to direct your attention to the screen and enjoy the following presentation.
During the summer of 1940, General George Marshall recognized the importance of establishing a rigorous training facility for new officers.
Today, one of the prime sources of the junior officers who provide this leadership is the Army's Officers Candidate School System, OCS.
We build the leaders that are at the tip of the spear, winning our nation's wars.
OCS has had hundreds of thousands of graduates lead soldiers in combat, preparing them and leading them on the worst day of their lives, and sometimes the last day of their lives. The weight you are carrying is meant to represent the weight of the responsibility you're going to have when you pin that bar on your chest.
Your body tells you, hey, stop, I'm tired, my muscles aching. What do you tell your body? What do you tell your mind? Let's go. Leaders don't give up.
This emblem still stands for a source of dedicated, professionally skillful junior leaders, and the magnificence they're doing around the world speaks for itself.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the arrival of the official party, honors to the Honorable Pete Hegseth, followed by the invocation given by Chaplain Robinson, and remain standing for the playing of the national anthem.
Please pray with me. Dear God, we give thanks for this day, for the blessings that come with it, and for the occasion that brings us together. We ask for your presence to be with us as we celebrate the accomplishment of these candidates. Thank you for their family members and friends that stand behind them, cheering them on to success. Thank you for the cadre, facilitators, and all who helped them to reach this point. And in advance, we thank you for the wise words that will be shared shortly by our guest speaker. Thank you for providing the energy and commitment required for these candidates to complete every task. And although there may have been moments of uncertainty and tasks that sometimes seemed impossible, always remind them of all that they have overcome and accomplished in this course. And may these memories always be an inspiration when they need it most. Bless each graduate, and as they join the ranks of those that have gone this way before them, equip them to always live out the OCS motto, standards, no compromise. In your name I pray, amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. The Honorable Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, Mr. Tata, Major General Tooley, Command Sergeant Major Haight, Colonel Insland, Colonel Tompkins, Command Sergeant Major Tolman, Colonel Retired Harmon, Lieutenant Colonel Kingsley, Command Sergeant Major Nieves, distinguished guests, friends, and family of our officer candidates, good morning and welcome to the OCS graduation for Class 50125. This class started their 12-week journey on June 16, 2025. Over the 12-week period, our 95 officer candidates were assigned to Delta Company, and today, the U.S. Army will receive 77 newly commissioned second lieutenants. Although their OCS journey is ending, they will continue to learn and develop as leaders to ensure the Army remains the world's premier fighting force. These candidates successfully completed Officer Candidate School, which consists of 3 phases: the Basic Officer Candidate Phase, the Intermediate Officer Candidate Phase, and the Senior Officer Candidate Phase. The Basic Phase consists of 5 weeks of academics and intense physical training to include the Gold to Black event, Bolton Obstacle Course, and land navigation. The Intermediate Phase consists of additional academic courses, officer skills evaluations, and culminates in a multi-day field leadership exercise. The Senior Phase consists of a senior mentor sessions and social events as the candidates transition to commissioned officers. The officer candidates will branch into all areas of the Army. After graduation today, our newly commissioned second lieutenants will report to their branch-specific Basic Officer Leaders course. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the Commandant of the Federal Officer Candidate School and the Commandant of the 3rd Battalion, 11th Infantry Regiment, OCS, Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan D. Kingsley.
Thank you. Good morning. Honorable Secretary Hegseth, General Tooley, Mr. Tata, Command Sergeant Major Haight, distinguished guests, family and friends of Danger Company, 3rd Battalion, 11th Infantry Regiment, and Officer Candidate School Class 501-25. Thank you for joining us here today at Fort Benning. Shortly, our graduates will take their sacred oath to support and defend the Constitution as commissioned officers in the United States Army. This is a sacred charge that demands the time, stress, and risk of service. However, we know families also sacrifice as your soldiers honor their oath. For that, I thank you, and I hope that memories like today balance times when duty calls your soldiers away. Our unit, 311 Infantry, was established in 1861, and our colors mirror 21 of the regiment's 28 total battle streamers. Today, our unit operates the Federal Officer Candidate School. Our mission is to train, educate, and commission leaders of character who lead by the Army ethic, and after their branch-specific training, stand ready to lead our nation's sons and daughters in large-scale combat. Since General George Marshall directed the creation of Officer Candidate School more than 80 years ago, our graduates continue to answer the nation's call. 75 OCS alumni have earned the Medal of Honor, and OCS continues to provide the Army with its scalable commissioning source in a complex and evolving world. These 77 graduates will soon commission into 14 branches as active duty, National Guard, and Reserve officers. Normally, about 30% of an OCS class has previous military experience, but this small, high-performance class is close to 90% having served prior to OCS, many in combat, and 3 from sister service academies, or from sister services, excuse me. All of them have at least a bachelor's degree, and a third of them have advanced degrees. OCS officers have unique experiences, perspectives, and maturity with backgrounds in all walks of life. Many here are in the reserve component, holding civilian jobs or second professions. In this class, we have 4 mothers and 30 fathers, 7 Division I athletes, teachers, business owners, data scientists, healthcare professionals, those in finance, sales, statistics, law enforcement, aviation, cybersecurity, and AI engineering, among others. Our youngest candidate here today is 23 years old. The oldest is 42. The average age of an OCS graduate is 28 versus 22 at ROTC or West Point. OCS draws people with maturity, drive, and real-life experience who are guided by incredible professional cadre. That's why these future officers are so likely to succeed. Today, these officer candidates leave OCS knowing that they prove their character and their fitness to lead. God bless them in the Army they go forth into. Please join me in a round of applause for your officer candidates. Danger Company candidates, I wish you all the best, and I charge you to maintain the traditions of excellence of OCS and the 11th Infantry Regiment as you lead our nation's most treasured resource, her sons and daughters. Standards, no compromise. Now please allow me to introduce our guest speaker. The Honorable Pete Hegseth, the 29th Secretary of Defense, was commissioned as an infantry officer in the U.S. Army National Guard after graduating from Princeton University in 2003. He deployed in support of operations in Guantanamo Bay, Iraq, and Afghanistan, and held multiple leadership and staff positions within the National Guard. His military awards include 2 Bronze Stars medals, the Joint Commendation Medal, 2 Army Commendation Medals, and the Master Combat Infantry Badge. Secretary Hegseth is also a 5-time author, most recently of the New York Times bestseller, The War on Warriors. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the Secretary of Defense, the Honorable Pete Hegseth.
Well, thank you, Colonel Kingsley, for that introduction. Very much appreciated. Major General Tooley, Command Sergeant Major Haight, other distinguished guests, friends, family, and most importantly, the graduating class of Officer Candidate School 50125. Formally from the Pentagon, we wish you congratulations. It is great to be here at Fort Benning, and it is Fort Benning, and out of Washington, D.C. In fact, I'd trade almost any meeting I have on a daily basis, most of the time, for a 5 a.m. ruck march. Although this morning it was a 5 a.m. jog. Slow it down a little bit. But I think our focus on fitness and standards, I love the motto. Standards, no compromise. That's kind of back to basics approach is precisely what we're focusing on. I didn't know that was the motto of Officer Candidate School. Standards, no compromise. That might become our office motto as well, across the board. It needs to be across all of our formations. And that's why, as the Secretary of Defense or any official in Washington, you're pretty busy, but you shouldn't be too busy to do PT, just like you're not too busy to do, there's not a job in our military that should be too busy that our formations can't do PT and meet the standards, no compromise. You see, when President Trump appointed me to be the Secretary of Defense, he said a couple things. The first was, Pete, you're going to have to be tough as shit. Really? He was right on that, for sure. But second, he said, you need to bring it back to warfighting. Back to warfighting. Back to the core of what the military does. Get the garbage out. And we do everything we can at the Pentagon to rise to that occasion daily. I'll say this, though. This place, Fort Benning, whether it's Olson Hall or Building 4 or watching OCS, you see, as I was going through IOBC, I did my infantry officer basic course here. We would, during different phases, would see the new phase of OCS coming. It got less and less painful to look at as everybody got more and more proficient. Certainly not this class with all the prior enlisted experience we have here. But back when I was new to the Army, I came to Fort Benning to do IOBC right next door. I graduated on June 3rd of 2003, and I was at infantry officer basic course at June 6th of 2003, 3 days later. And it was Fort Benning that played a key role in forging me. Next to serving God, wearing the uniform of the United States Army, I think, and I'm biased, but I think, is one of the greatest things any American could do. And at the short time we've been here, hey, it's great to see that toughness and commitment are still alive and well, and I wish every American could see the training you do, the way your family supports you, and what this fort does. Of course, this place is legendary. Of the 800,000 officers who served in the Army during World War II, more than half were graduates from OCS. They were called 90-day wonders, and without them, we would not have won the wars in Europe and the Pacific. One previous Secretary of Defense, a man named Cap Weinberger, visited OCS at Fort Benning when he was secretary, and he said, "This is the place where the fate of the country is quite literally decided." To that I say yes and amen. His boss, Ronald Reagan, was a lot like mine, focused on the basics, peace through strength. Today, you're also recognizing two fellow candidates with awards named for some of the great warfighters that were forged here. Colonel Robert Nett, the father of OCS, in 1944 in the Philippines. An enemy battalion attacked him with machine guns. He came back at him with his rifle, a bayonet, and killed 7 of the enemy. And then, of course, Lieutenant Colonel Hal Moore, who led 1st Battalion, 7th Cavalry Regiment in the Idrang Valley. He told the reporter that his goal was to clean out the communists. The reporter asked, "Do you think you may run across the main enemy force while you're here?" Lieutenant Colonel Moore answered, "We hope so. We like to kill them as many as we can." Well, his men killed more than 600 enemy soldiers. Lieutenant Colonel Moore completed the Infantry Officers Advanced Course right here at Benning. And you can take heart his philosophy, which is there's always one more thing you can do to increase your odds of success. And I'll tell you this, my first mission in combat as a lieutenant would not have been successful without taking that approach to heart. There's one more thing you can do to increase your odds of success. If your GPS doesn't work, you better know how to use your compass. If you don't know where you are, you better know how to use your map or terrain associate. You better leverage the hell out of your experienced NCOs. You need to know that mission, every aspect of it, every member of your platoon, and what they're capable of, what your squads are capable of, what your weapon systems are capable of, what air support is capable of, better than anybody else. And the more you prepare, the more likely you'll have success. So to you, members of OCS Class 50125, today marks the end of a demanding 12 weeks. But this is just the beginning. For many of you, not the beginning of a career, but the beginning of a new chapter. A new journey where you will lead the finest soldiers in the finest army the world has ever known. You have been forged, and now you will forge. Now, I'm not here to give you advice about how to live your life, except you can't go wrong when you fear God and fear no man, except maybe your first sergeant. You've already succeeded because you made the decision to be here. You've decided to come to this place. You've decided to join the service. You've decided to join our profession of arms. When I look at your class, and I can't really see you, but I'll see you all individually in a moment, you are America's elite. You are the real 1%. Those willing to raise their right hand and do what others will not in order to keep people you don't know safe and free. You entered the profession of arms. You are, to quote General Douglas MacArthur, the ones who are trained to fight. You are the ones with the will to win. You are the ones with the sure knowledge that in war, there is no substitute for victory. Well, in that pursuit, I'm here with a message from the President of the United States, which I always deliver to troops when I'm traveling. He has your back. As a commander-in-chief, he will ensure that you have everything you need to win, everything you need to be successful. And I know when I was an infantry lieutenant leading a platoon, that's all I wanted to know. I wanted to know that my company commander, battalion commander, brigade commander, division commander, MNFI commander had my back, understood the difficulties of what we face and the impossible decisions that had to be made at a moment's notice, that politicians will want to second guess. He has your back, I have your back, and we will ensure and work to ensure that everyone up and down in the chain of command has that same ethos. War requires risk. War requires tough decisions. We have your back. We're going to make sure that your hands aren't tied behind your back as you bring violence on the enemy. We're going to make sure that decisions are pushed down to the lowest possible level where they should be made. We're going to make sure that second guessing is brought to a minimum when good faith is brought to bear. that good decisions are made not by politicians and bureaucrats in a faraway capital, but by warfighters. Warfighters who understand the nature of the threat, warfighters like you and your men, forged. You see, before President Trump was elected, our national security policy was a tangled mess. We'd lost our way, and our enemies took notice. But President Trump has brought America back. He understands the idea of deterrence, of peace through strength, of putting America, Americans, American soil, and American citizens first, of applying common sense, which in the town I just came from is not all that common. Principles faithful to the origin of this great republic when General Washington said, "To be prepared for war is one of the most effective means of preserving peace." In fact, that was my first platoon motto. Those who long for peace must prepare for war. And that's why the warrior ethos is front and center of what we want to instill. No more DEI, no more quotas, no more low standards, no more trans madness, no more climate nonsense. Merit-based, colorblind, gender-neutral. Standards high and always getting higher. No compromise. One of the benefits of being Secretary of Defense, maybe a slightly different title tomorrow, we'll see, is being able to get out of Washington to come here and meet our frontline warfighters. To look you in the eyes, shake your hands, and congratulate you. I'll never forget what it felt like to be a second lieutenant. What it felt like to meet my platoon, to want to earn the respect of my NCOs, my squad leaders, E6s with that experience, my company commander, my first sergeant. It's a daunting task. But seeing your kind of bravery reminds me of a trip we took to Normandy on D-Day this past summer. Looking those veterans in the eyes and shaking their hands, honoring them for what they'd done on those beaches 81 years ago. They were old men. I'm looking at old men on those beaches of Normandy. Here I look at young men and women. But you are the same. You are the same soldiers as those soldiers. Because they still spoke of the brotherhood of warriors. The soldiers on their left, the soldiers on their right, they were together as they ran up those beaches. Regardless of your age and regardless of your era, those things never change. As I stand at the podium, I can't help but think about the bravery, and I'm reminded of my own first sergeant, a warfighter who changed my life when I was in Iraq and Afghanistan in 2005 and 2006. During his next deployment in 2007, one night, his outpost was attacked by 150 al-Qaeda fighters coming at him and his soldiers with RPGs, mortars, and everything they had. He put himself out front, carried soldiers to safety, protected others. I'm reminded of that Hal Moore quote, "There's always one more thing," because as the first sergeant of that unit, when they occupied that outpost, he ran his infantrymen into the ground for 2 days because he believed the defensive positions on that outpost were inadequate. And so they didn't sleep, they didn't rest, they barely ate, and they worked. And they worked, and they put up defensive position after defensive position, after camo netting, after sandbags, after sector sketches, you name it, they did it. And when you talk to the men of that company, they credit him for what he did when the bullets were not flying, the way in which he prepared in an uncompromising way that saved their lives. Without that, they would have been sitting ducks. Instead, they were a hardened position, impossible to penetrate. In the end, he and his men killed 18 al-Qaeda fighters. I still call on him today. He's one of my senior advisors. His name is Eric Garrissey, and he was a recipient of the Distinguished Service Cross for his actions in Iraq. That's the kind of warrior ethos we are restoring in the military. Uncompromising, unrelenting, with the mission first always. No more summertime soldiers or sunshine patriots. I think about bravery like his and others when we have to sadly write letters to spouses and parents of children and children, letters that are delivered after their loved ones died while serving, or phone calls that we make on a regular basis. Letters to a 6-year-old where I write, as you grow up, my wish is that with each passing year, you'll come to realize that your dad represents the best of the country. Those letters remind me that my job, our job, is life and death. Other people have the convenience of getting some things wrong or making a mistake over here, and of course we all make mistakes because we're human beings. But the reason why standards matter so much is because we are in the business of kill or be killed, live or die. You know that. And so you're about to graduate. You're going to remember the PT formations, the 5th week in the field, the lights out, the last 500 meters of a 12-mile ruck march, holding that rucksack up high on your shoulders so it's not rubbing against your back. The long strides and exaggerated steps, the deep breaths you take from getting lightheaded. You will draw on those sweltering days of summer that gave way to September when you had long last made it. In fact, your time frame is almost exactly the time frame during the year of when I went through infantry officer basic course. It can be a bit unrelenting with the heat here in Georgia. You've been forged. You know, a few weeks ago, I hosted the heralded 7th annual Pete Hegseth NBA All-Star Summer Hoops basketball camp. It was for 7 kids. My kids and the neighbor kids. It was a small but mighty little basketball camp. We do it every year. We did it when I lived in New Jersey, when I lived in Tennessee, and this year we did it for 3 days in Washington. At the end of a day at the Pentagon, we went to a basketball court and ran through drills. My dad was a basketball coach, so it never comes out of my DNA. None of my kids are going to play in the pros. I'll tell you that. The first couple years of the camp, we had rules: never quit, listen and learn, and work hard. The kids were very young then, so we did have another rule that's since been sent to the wayside. It was don't cry. We needed it a lot. But a couple of years ago, we added the top rule, which is honor God. So we're putting a ball through a hoop, learning how to dribble, but we honor and glorify God in how we do all things. Those of us in the profession of arms are doing things that are a lot more important than playing hoops. But what we do in any activity demonstrates honoring God. And so at our camp this year, the scripture we used was Romans 5, verses 3 through 4. And the word of the Lord. Not only that, but we are rejoicing in our suffering, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. You have endured, and when you endure, character is developed, and that leads to hope. So in the next part of your journey, you're going to incur setbacks. No matter where you're going, active, guard, reserve, a foreign country, you name it, you will have impossible moments, insurmountable challenges. You will have to endure. Your character will continue to be forged. May you lead with endurance. May you build character. And in the end, may there be hope. Because I'll tell you this, because today, on behalf of a nation, you bring me hope. That we still produce young men and women willing to do hard things for not enough pay and no glory, no spotlight. Raise that right hand to defend the Constitution and defend our nation and our citizens. We don't exist unless we have people like you. You give me hope. So I wish you congratulations today. You've completed the course. Our nation needs you. Go serve and go fight. God bless.
Commissioning.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. having been appointed as an officer in the Army of the United States, in the grade of second lieutenant, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which I am about to enter. So help me God. Congratulations, lieutenants. Thank you.
At this time, we would like to take a moment to thank all the organizations that supported and sponsored Class 50125 from their start on June 16, 2025 to their commissioning today. These sponsors have donated awards for distinguished graduates, money to support the candidates' events, and bricks that will be placed in the OCS Memorial Walk to remember and recognize the company leadership and cadre, Class 50125, and the distinguished graduates. These organizations are the United States Army Officer Candidate School Alumni Association, the American Armed Forces Mutual Aid Association, the United States Automobile Association, the Association of the United States Army, and the Military Officer Association of America. Please join us in thanking these organizations for their support. The Distinguished Honor Graduate is the graduate on the Commandant's list who has outperformed all other OCS graduates in academics, physical fitness, and leadership while displaying the professional qualities required of officers in the United States Army. The Distinguished Honor Graduate will receive a saber, a brick on the OCS Memorial Walk, sponsored by the Military Officers Association of America, an Army Achievement Medal, and the U.S. Army Officer Candidate School Alumni Association Challenge Coin. Ladies and gentlemen, the recipient of the Jess Walls Award, Distinguished Honor Graduate of OCS Class 50125, is Second Lieutenant Justin Morrill, Signal Corps, Branch Detail, Infantry. Rendering a newly commissioned officer's first salute, along with pinning their first set of second lieutenant gold bars, are time-honored traditions in our Army. At this time, the class's Distinguished Honor Graduate, Second Lieutenant Worrell, will be joined by his wife, Brianna Worrell. Brianna will place the rank upon his shoulder boards, and Sergeant First Class Devlin will have the honor of rendering Second Lieutenant Worrell's first salute. The Distinguished Leadership Graduate is the graduate on the Commandant's list who displayed the highest standard of leadership qualities in the class. The Distinguished Leadership Graduate will receive a brick on the OCS Memorial Walk, sponsored by the Association of the United States Army, a U.S. Army Officer Candidate School Alumni Association Challenge Coin, and an Army Achievement Medal. Ladies and gentlemen, the recipient of the Robert B. Nett Award and the Distinguished Leadership Graduate of Class 50125 is Second Lieutenant Mitchell Silcox, Corps of Engineers. The Distinguished Academic Graduate is the Graduate Robert B. Nett Award, and the Distinguished Leadership Graduate of Class 50125 is Second Lieutenant Mitchell Silcox, Corps of Engineers. The Distinguished Academic Graduate is the graduate on the Commandant's List with the highest academic average in the final academic report. The Distinguished Academic Graduate will receive a brick on the OCS Memorial Walk, sponsored by the Association of the United States Army, a United States Army Officer Candidate School Alumni Association Challenge Coin, and an Army Achievement Medal. Ladies and gentlemen, the recipient of the Distinguished Academic Award of OCS Class 50125 is Second Lieutenant Michael Iglesias, Logistics. The Hal and Julia Moore Character Award is presented to the individual who demonstrated the most exceptional character throughout OCS. To quote General Moore, he or she must be competent, exercise good judgment, and must have character. By itself, competence is meaningless without character and good judgment. He will receive an Army Achievement Medal, Hal Moore's book on leadership, Winning When Outgunned and Outmanned, and his diploma. Ladies and gentlemen, the recipient of the Hal and Julia Moore Character Award for OCS Class 50125 is Second Lieutenant Abraham Luna, Military Intelligence. The Distinguished Physical Fitness Graduates are the male and female graduates who scored the highest average on the Officer Candidate School's physical. Will be awarded the Iron Mike Award and a brick in the OCS Memorial Walk provided by the U.S. Army Officer Candidate School Alumni Association and a challenge coin. Ladies and gentlemen, the Distinguished Physical Fitness Graduates of OCS Class 50125 for males with a score of 500 on the AFT is Second Lieutenant Samuel Adu Bohen, Signal Corps. And for females with a score of 495 on the AFT is Second Lieutenant Eileen Palawan, Logistics. The Commandant's List are the graduates who rank in the top 20% of the class while completing each graduation requirement on the first attempt. Please hold your applause until the entire Commandant's List has been read. In addition to the Distinguished Honor Graduate, the Distinguished Leadership Graduate, the Distinguished Academic Graduate, the Hal and Julia Moore Character Award recipient, and the Distinguished Physical Fitness Graduates, the graduates placing on the Commandant's List for Class 50125 are Second Lieutenant Joshua Criswell, Logistics. Second Lieutenant John Riddick, Corps of Engineers. Second Lieutenant Darren Green, Military Intelligence. Second Lieutenant Hunter Livingston, Corps of Engineers. Second Lieutenant David Hunt, Military Intelligence. Second Lieutenant Carmelina Garcia Meseo, Signal Corps. Second Lieutenant Philip Bartell, Cyber Corps. Second Lieutenant James Frazier, Military Intelligence, Branch Detail, Infantry. Second Lieutenant Michael Saeed, Medical Services. Second Lieutenant Lorraine Fletcher, Corps of Engineers. Second Lieutenant Kakal Chavi, Signal Corps. And Second Lieutenant Edward Hahn, Adjutant General Corps. In alphabetical order, the remaining members of OCS Class 50125. Please hold your applause until all graduates have been called. Candidates commissioning as Second Lieutenants are Second Lieutenant Rodney Adu Acorsa, Field Artillery. Second Lieutenant James Aiken, Military Intelligence. Second Lieutenant Christian Baggison, Military Police. Second Lieutenant Dominique Bennett, Chemical Corps. Second Lieutenant Mackenzie Blondes, Signal Corps. Second Lieutenant Edward Brown, Medical Services. Second Lieutenant Cameron Burris, Logistics. Second Lieutenant Mohammed Shekaru, in Military Intelligence, Branch Detail, Infantry. Second Lieutenant Courtney Cox, Signal Corps. Second Lieutenant Joshua Davis, Signal Corps, Branch Detail, Infantry. Second Lieutenant Matthew Dion, Logistics. Second Lieutenant Naaman Dubé, Field Artillery. Second Lieutenant Håkan Ellingbo, Corps of Engineers. Second Lieutenant Colin Frazier, Military Intelligence. Second Lieutenant Lionel Frew, Cyber Corps. Second Lieutenant Thorne Geis, Logistics. Second Lieutenant Levon Gregolia, Signal Corps. Second Lieutenant Min Kyu Han, Signal Corps. Second Lieutenant Eugene Harvey III, Cyber Corps. Second Lieutenant Tajane Henry Coney, Corps of Engineers. Second Lieutenant Brittany Hines, Logistics. Second Lieutenant Ely Johns, Field Artillery. Second Lieutenant Montel Johnson Troop, Infantry. Second Lieutenant Ji Jung, Medical Services. Second Lieutenant Surain Conchi, Signal Corps. Second Lieutenant Jonathan Kasuba, Corps of Engineers. Second Lieutenant Yuja Liu, Logistics. Second Lieutenant Brianna May, Adjutant General Corps, Branch Detail, Field Artillery. Second Lieutenant Zachary McIntyre, Signal Corps. Second Lieutenant Christopher Mella, Military Intelligence. Second Lieutenant Anthony Mercado, Military Intelligence, Branch Detail, Field Artillery. Second Lieutenant Shane Monglavong, Finance Corps. Second Lieutenant Edwin Nazario Cruz, Logistics. Second Lieutenant Roy O'Neill, Military Police. Second Lieutenant Eric Onyongo, Logistics. Second Lieutenant Perla Ortiz, Logistics. Second Lieutenant Joseph Ostrander, Infantry. Second Lieutenant Renier Owsley, Medical Services. Second Lieutenant Jordan Perna, Military Intelligence. Second Lieutenant Ronald Pierre, Signal Corps. Second Lieutenant Marcella Price Gardner, Logistics. Second Lieutenant Alana Rivera Vasquez, Logistics. Second Lieutenant Michaela Romero, Military Intelligence. Second Lieutenant Dmitry Roisman, Air Defense Artillery. Second Lieutenant Jacob Ruth, Signal Corps. Second Lieutenant Patience Sando, Adjutant General Corps. Second Lieutenant Devontae Spellman, Signal Corps. Second Lieutenant Paul Stevens, Military Intelligence, Branch Detail, Armor. Second Lieutenant Sharendra Takiri, Finance Corps. Second Lieutenant Sheriff Tijani Ambimbola, Armor. Second Lieutenant Elijah Terrell, Logistics. Second Lieutenant Lloyd Turner, Signal Corps, Branch Detail, Field Artillery. Second Lieutenant Justin Vanbert, Military Intelligence. Second Lieutenant Lloyd Williams, Medical Services. Second Lieutenant Lloyd Williams, Medical Services. Second Lieutenant Trenton Wright, Cyber Corps. Second Lieutenant Jeffrey Wyatt, Logistics. Second Lieutenant David Yee, Military Intelligence. And Second Lieutenant Yi Young Zhang, Medical Services. Each cycle, one cadre member is chosen by the candidates and cadre team as the cadre of the cycle for their teaching, mentoring, and professional development of the candidates. They will receive an Army Commendation Medal, a brick on the OCS Memorial Walk, sponsored by the U.S. Army Officer Candidate School Alumni Association, and a challenge coin. The cadre of the cycle for Class 50125 is Sergeant First Class Joshua McPherson. At this time, Delta Company would like to highlight two civilians that positively impacted the unit. Lakeisha Johnson from the OCS DFAC and Patrick Smith from the Harmony Church DFAC largely contributed to the logistical success of this course. We appreciate their unyielding support and efforts for our company. Please give these two individuals a round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, OCS Class 50125 would like to present the Honorable Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, with a gift as a token of their appreciation for his time and words of wisdom. The gift will be presented by Second Lieutenant Worrell, the Distinguished Honor Graduate. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the playing of the OCS alma mater, the Army song, and remain standing for the departure of the official party.